As the billionaire Daniel Cross reached for his wine, a waitress's hand shot out. It wasn't to refill his glass, but to take it. In one fluid motion, she swapped it with another from her tray. The move was silent, so fast it was almost invisible. For a split second, Daniel's world froze. His fingers, which were about to close around the glass, just hovered in midair. A sudden, sharp dread washed over him. He opened his mouth to question the strange breach of service, but the words died on his lips. He saw it, a flicker of pure panic in his business partner's eyes before it was gone. In that instant, Daniel Cross, a man who moved markets with a single command, knew the waitress hadn't just switched his glass, she'd just saved his life. The evening had felt suffocating from the start. The restaurant was hushed and formal, the air thick with the scent of money. It was Christmas Eve, and the final signing of a merger that would redefine Daniel's industry was set for the morning. Tonight's dinner with his partner, Cameron, was supposed to be a celebration, but it didn't feel like one. A thick tension clung to their table. Daniel, who could read people with forensic precision, felt it the moment Cameron arrived. Cameron, usually so confident, was a mess of frayed nerves. His handshake was clammy, his smile a tight, unnatural grimace. He blamed it on the weight of the deal, and Daniel accepted it, even though his gut screamed that something was deeply wrong. Daniel Cross hadn't become a billionaire by being naive. At 52, he trusted very few people, and Cameron, his partner of 15 years, his best friend, was at the top of that short list. They had started with nothing and built an empire together. Their partnership was supposed to be the one constant in Daniel's turbulent world. Tonight, though, that constant felt broken. Cameron avoided his gaze, his eyes darting around the room. He'd insisted on ordering the wine, a specific vintage he claimed was sentimental, but his hand trembled as he poured the deep red liquid into Daniel's glass. Daniel noted the tremor, but filed it away under nerves. Then Cameron excused himself to the restroom, his face pale and beaded with sweat. "Just need a moment," he mumbled. It was during his absence that the waitress first approached. Her name was Sarah, though Daniel didn't know it then. She moved with a quiet grace that made her almost invisible. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with the neutral expression common among high-end service staff. He'd barely registered her, but as she approached while Cameron was away, Daniel felt a gaze on him. He looked up and met her eyes. For less than a second, he saw not a servant, but an observer. There was a watchfulness there that struck him as unusual. She gave a slight nod and moved on, her professional mask sliding back into place. He dismissed it as his own paranoia. Then Cameron returned, his composure even more fragile. He sat down heavily. "To the future, Daniel," he said, his voice strained. "To everything we've built." Daniel raised his glass to meet his partner's, and it was in that exact moment that Sarah reappeared. Her movement was just a whisper. One hand held a tray with an identical glass of wine. The other reached out with the precision of a surgeon and intercepted his glass just as he was about to sip. "My apologies, sir," she murmured, her voice low and steady. "I noticed a slight sediment in your glass. A bottle of this quality deserves a perfect pour." Before he could even process it, his glass was gone, replaced by the new one. She placed the original glass, the one Cameron had poured, on the far side of the table near a centerpiece. The whole thing took less than 3 seconds. It was flawless, discreet, and utterly bizarre. Daniel's first reaction was annoyance. Who was she to interrupt his toast? He was about to complain to the manager, but the words never came out, because he looked at his partner and saw it. Pure, undiluted terror. Cameron's mask of friendship crumbled, revealing a gaping maw of panic. His eyes were wide, fixed on the original glass, now sitting out of Daniel's reach. His face went ghost white. The waitress's words echoed in Daniel's mind. Sediment. It was the perfect professional excuse. Anyone else would have accepted it. But Daniel Cross didn't build his fortune by accepting things at face value. He knew, with a sudden, chilling certainty, this wasn't about sediment. His mind started working at lightning speed. The pieces snapped into place. Cameron's sweaty palms, his darting eyes, the tremor in his hand as he poured the wine, only into Daniel's glass, he now realized, the panicked trip to the restroom, and the waitress, that watchful gaze he'd noticed. It wasn't paranoia. She had seen something. She had been trying to warn him. He was in mortal danger. The man sitting opposite him, his brother in all but blood, had just tried to poison him on the eve of their greatest triumph. Why? The question burned, but it was secondary to the immediate threat. He looked at the two glasses. They were identical. Was he insane? Was he building this all up from a series of coincidences? His instinct for survival warred with 15 years of friendship. To accuse Cameron would detonate their lives. If he was wrong, the fallout would be catastrophic. But if he was right... He glanced at Sarah, who was now attending to another table. She had given him a choice. She had armed him with doubt. She hadn't made a scene. She had simply switched the glasses and left the next move to him. She had trusted him to be smart enough to understand. He had to know for sure. He picked up the new glass, the one Sarah had given him, and smiled at his partner. It was a cold, predatory smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Where were we?" Daniel asked, his voice deceptively calm. "Ah, yes, a toast." Daniel held the new glass high. Across the table, Cameron flinched. The panic in his eyes was gone, replaced by a frantic, confused calculation. His plan had gone sideways, and he didn't know why or how. "To the future," Daniel repeated, his gaze locked on Cameron. He watched a bead of sweat trace a path down his partner's temple. Instead of drinking, Daniel let out a small theatrical cough and set the glass down. "Forgive me," he said, feigning hoarseness, "this dry winter air." He took a sip of water, his eyes never leaving Cameron's face. He could see the conflict warring within his partner, relief that he hadn't drunk the wine, but also terror that the plan was derailing. Daniel leaned back. "You know, Cam," he began conversationally, "I was just thinking about the early days, the all-nighters, the cheap coffee. We trusted each other completely back then. It was us against the world." Every word was a carefully aimed dart. He spoke of loyalty and then of betrayal. "It's the ultimate poison," Daniel said, letting the word hang in the air. "It doesn't just kill a person, it kills their past." Cameron swallowed hard. "You're being awfully philosophical tonight, Daniel," he managed, his laugh coming out as a strangled croak. "Perhaps," Daniel said smoothly. "Big nights call for big thoughts." He was aware of Sarah moving through the restaurant like a phantom, her presence a quiet, reassuring hum in the background. She had set the stage and was watching from the wings to see how he would perform. It was time to spring the trap. Daniel leaned forward. "You know what I've always believed, Cameron? A real partnership is about sharing everything, the risks, the rewards, the wine." He smiled, and then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he reached for the other glass, the original one, the one Cameron had poured for him. He slid it across the polished table until it sat directly in front of Cameron. Cameron stared at the glass as if a coiled snake. The blood drained from his face. What is this?" Cameron stammered. "It's a symbol," Daniel said, his voice dropping to an icy tenor. "You poured this for me, to celebrate our shared future. I think it's only fitting you should be the one to drink it, a toast from my glass to our unbreakable trust." The silence was absolute, sucking the air from their corner of the restaurant. Cameron's eyes darted from the glass to Daniel's face and back. He was trapped. To refuse the drink was an admission of guilt. To accept it was a death sentence. "Go on," Daniel urged, his voice soft but laced with steel. "Drink it. To us."
The mask of friendship evaporated, replaced by the raw, ugly face of desperation. Cameron stared at the wineglass, his breathing ragged.
"Don't be ridiculous, Daniel," Cameron hissed, trying for bravado. "What kind of game are you playing?" "It's no game," Daniel replied, his voice chillingly calm. "You were so keen for me to drink this specific wine, from this specific glass. I'm merely offering you the honor. Now drink." The command was absolute. I don't want any more wine," Cameron stammered, his hand shaking so violently it rattled the table. He tried to laugh, a pathetic gurgle. "I'm feeling a bit unwell." "Are you?" Daniel said with mock sympathy. "I'm sure a sip of this fine vintage will settle your stomach. It's what you intended for me, after all." Panic finally consumed Cameron. He shoved his chair back, the legs scraping loudly on the floor. He was going to run. As he lunged to his feet, his flailing arm hit the table. The poisoned glass tipped. The red wine, laden with a lethal promise, bled across the white tablecloth, a stark, accusing stain. The glass itself rolled to the edge and fell, landing with a soft thud on the carpet. The small act of violence broke the spell of the room. Heads turned. A murmur rippled through the diners. But Daniel was prepared. Before Cameron could take a single step, Daniel spoke a single, quiet word. "Security." As if on cue, two large men in tailored suits rose from a nearby table where they had been posing as diners. They flanked a stunned Cameron before he could even process it. The trap had closed. "Daniel, what is this? Have you gone mad?" Cameron sputtered, struggling against their firm grip. "The only madness here, Cameron, was believing you could betray me and get away with it," Daniel said, his voice low. He stood up slowly, the picture of calm authority. The manager rushed over, but Daniel simply held up a hand. "This is a private matter. My associate is unwell and is being escorted out. Please apologize to your guests." As his security team dragged the defeated Cameron away, Daniel's eyes scanned the room. He wasn't looking at the diners or the frantic manager. His gaze cut through the chaos, searching for only one person. He found her, standing near the service station. Sarah. Their eyes met across the room. There was no triumph in her expression. There was only a profound, quiet stillness and a shared understanding that needed no words. In her calm, steady gaze, he saw his own survival reflected back at him. He hadn't just saved his life. She had given him the chance to face his betrayer on his own terms. It was a debt so immense, he wasn't sure how it could ever be repaid. The commotion died down quickly. The manager smoothed things over, and within minutes, the restaurant's serene illusion was almost perfectly restored. Cameron was gone. But Daniel remained standing. A profound chill settled deep in his bones. He looked at the empty chair where a 15-year friendship had just evaporated. He was so close to the edge. He didn't want champagne. He didn't want to leave. He waited. He watched Sarah go about her duties with the same quiet efficiency she'd shown all night. To anyone else, she was just an employee finishing her shift. But Daniel saw the truth. She was the calm eye of his personal storm. For a few minutes, he saw her head towards the kitchen. This was his moment. He crossed the dining room and reached the entrance just as she was about to push through the door. He didn't speak. He just stood there. She stopped and finished stacking the plates on her tray before turning to face him. There was no surprise in her eyes, no fear. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" she asked, her voice steady. He was struck again by her incredible poise. He, the $1 million security detail, had been reeling, while she, the waitress, had been an island of absolute calm. "Yes," Daniel said, his voice softer than he intended. "I'd like you to join me." He gestured toward a small, secluded table in an alcove, away from prying eyes. She hesitated for just a second, a breach of every rule she was meant to follow. But then she gave a single, small nod. "Please," he added. She placed her tray on a service stand and walked with him to the table.
They sat opposite each other, the silence thick with unspoken meaning. Another waiter, confused, hurried over. "Sir? Ma'am? Can I get you anything?" Daniel's attention was focused entirely on the young woman. "What would you like?" he asked her. Sarah looked down at her hands, then back up at him. For the first time, her face showed a flicker of the immense strain she had been under. "A glass of water, please," she said softly. "2 glasses of water," Daniel told the waiter. When they were alone again, he studied her, truly seeing her for the first time. He saw the intelligence in her eyes and the quiet dignity in her posture. His $1 million security detail had been sitting at the next table, completely oblivious. This young woman, armed with nothing but perception and a tray, had seen what they'd all missed. "You saved my life," he said finally. The words were simple, direct, and the truest thing he had said all night. She didn't deny it. She met his gaze and nodded. "I saw his hands," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "When he was pouring the wine, they were shaking. Not from excitement, it was something else. And the look in his eyes when he came back from the restroom, he looked like a man who was about to jump from a cliff." She paused. "He looked like he was drowning." Daniel listened, captivated. She hadn't just seen danger, she understood human fragility. He was surrounded by people who told him what he wanted to hear. He had forgotten what simple, unadorned truth sounded like. He knew what he had to do, and offering her money felt cheap, an insult to the magnitude of her action. He had to offer something more, something real. A person with your perception, with your courage and character, shouldn't be clearing tables, unless that's what you truly want. He leaned forward. "I have a foundation. We find people with extraordinary potential, people who see things differently, and we invest in them. I want to invest in you, Sarah." For the first time, her composure broke. Her eyes, so steady before, welled with tears. "Whatever you want to do," Daniel continued, his voice firm but gentle. "Go to university, start a business. You tell me what your dream is, and I'll make it happen. Consider it a signing bonus for a new partnership, the one I should have had all along." A single tear traced a path down her cheek. It was a crack in the dam, letting through the first glimmer of a future she had never dared to imagine. It was a promise made in the quiet aftermath of a storm, a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones you never see coming.